Hello and welcome to Let's Talk About It with Taylor Nolan. I am your host and I am very, very excited about today's episode, partially because I think for the first time I might have actually fangirled over this guest slightly. You guys might have heard an episode that I did a few episodes ago. I think it was 2 episodes ago with Sarah, and I've been introduced to this wonderful guest today through Sarah and have followed her on Instagram at Balanced Black Girl. She also has a podcast and have just loved her account and have super related to her in so many different ways. So I'm super, super excited to get into talking about body image, talking more about therapy, and talking about all things women of color. So welcome, Les, to the show. I'm so excited to talk to you.
I'm so excited to be here. And the fact that even that you use the word fangirl and me in the same sentence, I'm like, what? Oh my God.
Yeah, no, because I've honestly loved following your account, and it's I think it's really important on social media that we follow people that make us feel good, and people that we can scroll through and relate to on some level and not feel just depressed and anxious and feel like there's this weird standard, and people that are just being their real authentic selves. And when I see you on there and you're talking about your curls or you're in your robe or whatever you're doing, I'm like, whoa, yeah, I feel that. I feel it. And it's nice. It's really, really nice to see.
I'm so glad that you said that, because I think social media users, we have so much power. Social media can be really, really challenging. We all know, but we also have the power of who we follow and of what we consume and give our attention to.
Totally. It's very important with what you do with that follow button.
Yeah.
There are many days that as I'm scrolling, I see something and I'm like, what? And then I'm like, it's time to unfollow. That didn't make me feel good. And to just ask myself, what message is this sending me as I look at it? And why am I liking it? It's good questions to ask yourself.
Exactly.
But I've loved following you, and I'm very excited that Sarah introduced us.
I am too.
Yeah.
Yeah. For anyone who doesn't know, Sarah is a photographer who takes both of our Instagram, all of our photos on both of our Instagrams.
Yep.
Are Sarah.
Yes.
So and it's you all know her too.
Basically, yeah. And we talked a little bit about body image in Sarah's episode, and we'll talk a little bit about that in this episode too, because you were a personal trainer?
Yeah.
Yeah. You were personal trainer, certified trainer for several years, right?
Yeah.
And have just recently stopped doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was a personal trainer. I mean, technically I'm still a personal trainer. I'm just not training clients, but for almost 6 years now.
Yeah.
Which is a long time to be in the fitness space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there anything particular that kind of drew you into working in that space?
I mean, I first started getting interested in fitness when I was in college. I had my first corporate internship the summer between my junior and senior year, and it was my first desk job. It was the first time I had to sit still, and I just felt like crap. I was just so tired all the time and groggy, and I was thinking, I'm 20 years old. Why do I feel so bad? So I thought, okay, well, maybe if I start working out, that'll give me some more energy. Maybe I'll feel better, which actually, looking back on it, I'm like, that's actually pretty insightful for a 20-year-old.
I felt like that at 20, but I wasn't oh, I should work out.
I had my moments of wisdom.
Yeah.
And so I started getting really into fitness. And from there, I just kind of fell in love with it. I fell in love with how it made me feel physically, mentally, and it became a part of my regular life. And for me, I didn't have a huge physical transformation. I felt better and I became stronger, but I didn't have a lot of weight to lose or anything like that. But the biggest difference I noticed was my confidence level. I was always just super quiet, super shy. And when I was working out more, I started speaking up for myself more and being comfortable putting myself out there. And I thought, well, if fitness helped me do this, maybe I can help other people do this too. And so that was when I started training other people.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's, I think, a very beautiful kind of sentiment to get into that kind of work of noticing how something's helped you and wanting to kind of see how you can pay that forward and help other people. And I'm sure that you did help many people in the 6-ish years that you were seeing clients. I'm curious for you, what that was kind of like because I'm sure that did not just involve like a physical transformation when you worked with clients.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, especially in situations where you're training a client one-on-one in person and you're talking them through it, you're kind of their life coach in that moment. Not only are you giving them a workout, but you're also talking to them, convincing them that they can do it when they doubt themselves. They confide in you with maybe things that they're feeling uncomfortable with fitness or even outside of fitness. You get put in the position that is like a therapist, and it's sometimes hard to draw that boundary of, but I'm not, and maybe you should see someone. So, clients in fitness, I think, have a lot of trust and vulnerability with the professionals that they work with, and that's something that should be taken super seriously.
Yeah. Did you ever have to like refer someone or be like, suggest to them that they also seek any kind of counseling?
Thankfully, my clients, for the most part, were pretty good at kind of regulating themselves. I mean, some of them, it would be kind of a TMI of like, I had babies, I can't be doing all this jumping, or, things like that are a little TMI. Yeah. Thankfully, nothing that was ever super heavy. Yeah. Because I think that would have been a challenging conversation to have that I'm sure I probably would have tried to, but I don't know if I would have been particularly eloquent in that moment.
Yeah. And now tell me if I could be wrong here. From what I'm remembering, I believe that Sarah had said that, a lot of the stuff that you kind of covered in your podcast that you've had for a few months now, kind of focusing on like how fitness for like women of color is like very different. And I'm curious if you can kind of like share some of your experiences with like how being a woman of color, whether the pursuit of fitness or just being in the field, like how that's different.
Yeah, definitely. Oh man, I have so many thoughts about this. I'll try to.
Yeah, let's hear them. I want to hear them. I've never talked to anyone about this before.
Oh, yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing when it comes to women of color in fitness or in wellness in general is just representation. I mean, if you Google fitness or if you Google fit or yoga or happy, you will probably find on Google Images a bunch of stock photos of smiling, thin, blonde, white women.
Yep.
Which is all well and good, except for those of us who don't fit those categories. Yeah. It's like, well, then where are we in all of this? Are we not fit? Are we not happy?
Yeah.
Are we not yogis? Are we not, worthy of health if we're not the picture of it, or if no one who looks like us or shares our experience is there? And for me, a lot of my experiences with that came from events that I would go to. So as a fitness professional, every couple of years you have to re-up your certifications, you have to take trainings, you go to events, or even just as someone who's a wellness junkie myself, I would go to different events and kind of networking opportunities to be around people in the space. And so many times I would look around and be the only woman of color in the room. And it is super, super uncomfortable.
That's usually me.
If you've had that experience as well, because you just feel different. You feel like your interactions with people are a little more surface level, that you can't kind of go as deep because there's just a lack of shared experience. And when you take something as complicated as fitness, that then also includes our bodies, our physical ability, how we feel about ourselves, our mood that day, everything that's all wrapped into it, it makes it really hard to feel like fitness and wellness are for us if we feel like we're not a part of it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's maybe also a little bit of this, like, you already kind of, as a woman of color, I think there's like that stereotype already out there of like being like an angry Black woman. And that then if you're like a strong Black woman as well, that like you could come across as being super aggressive or like, very intimidating. And like, I'm curious if that's something that like other women of color have been self-conscious of, or have maybe like deterred them from wanting to like get really fit. Like, I don't know if anyone's ever shared that with you before, or I'm trying to like reflect and think about like my fitness journey. And I don't think that that's necessarily been a part of it for me, but I can imagine it would be for some women.
For some women, yeah. And I have had conversations with people around that. And maybe not that always relate to fitness, but I think for a lot of women of color, especially Black women, there is that fear of, if I speak up for myself too much, or if I show up too much, will I be perceived as the angry Black woman? And always having to balance that. on one hand standing up for myself, but on the other hand, making sure that the other people around me are comfortable at all times, and almost putting other people's comfort in front of our own over fear of how we're perceived.
Yeah, which I think is something that people of color are very like well attuned to doing at this point, unfortunately.
It's natural.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Super, super shitty. But yeah, I think that even... I guess I'm just curious too, like when you think about, like you said, kind of going to some of these fitness events and stuff, like, yeah, I don't know that there really are women, even that I follow on Instagram, maybe aside from you, that are women of color and are like big in the fitness world. Like even when I was in Canada a few weeks ago, someone had suggested this girl who's like a really big in fitness and, you know, has just this amazing ass and just like such a good body. And it was a white blonde girl. And so like I look on the page, you know, and she's doing all this stuff. And first of all, she was doing like some really intense stuff that I was like, not for me. But second, you know, I was like, I wouldn't look like this. Like, and I don't think I'd be perceived in the same way that she's being perceived.
Yep.
So I was like, I don't actually feel as excited about following her as maybe you do.
Yeah. Oh, I've had that experience so many times where I come across profiles and thought the same thing, like good for her, but not for me.
Yeah.
This doesn't represent me at all.
Yeah. I'm curious if off the top of your head, if you can think of any like women of color trainers and stuff like online that you follow that maybe I should follow.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So many. And so one that I really love is a friend of mine, Chrissy King, who's wonderful. I've had her on my podcast as well. And she is just an amazing woman in fitness and also just a really inspiring person in terms of her messaging and how she also reminds women that it's okay to speak up for yourselves and take up space and be fit, but you don't need to do it to shrink yourself down. Yeah. Which is super, super wonderful. So she's a really great person to follow for fitness content. I know one of the women who's super huge. She is one of the few women of color fitness influencers that's huge. What is her last name? Massey. I know her first name is Massey. I can't remember her last name, but she is like a huge wellness influencer who is like killing it and really representing and holding it down, which is great. Another friend of mine, Felicia Johnson, who's also a local Seattleite, and I've had her on the podcast as well, is awesome.
I feel like maybe I've met her.
Yeah. Oh, you were on the same panel as her.
Yes.
At the Sweat Summit.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was at a Sweat Summit.
Yes, that's what it was.
I can't even say seriously. I'm like, I was at a Sweat Summit.
You were. Yes.
Not where I belong. But yeah, it was like a fitness retreat thing. And like one of the panels, I think, I'm pretty sure mine was like mental health. So yeah, that's why I was there to discuss that.
Yeah.
But yeah, she was
there. Yeah. So she's a great person. And she actually just started another account where she shares like workout videos specifically.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll put the links and the tags mentions for all those Instagram accounts in the episode notes description, so you guys can check them out as well. But that's good to know. Yeah, I should definitely follow her.
Yeah.
She seemed really cool. She had some very good insights from what I remember in that panel. And yeah, and I'm glad to know that that there's other local people too that I can follow. And again, I think that's like what you said kind of at the beginning of talking about women of color in fitness is just the representation.
Yeah.
That, you know, I don't see that.
That our health matters too, just as much as anyone else's.
Yeah. Okay, guys, I know we're talking about fitness and we're talking about health. And as we talk about fitness, one of the things that gets me actually motivated to work out is having cute, athletic wear. So I want to take a little bit of a break here to share with you listeners an amazing deal that you can get with Fabletics. You guys can get 2 leggings for only $24. What a freaking bargain. It's super easy. You take a little pop style quiz and then you get personalized outfit recommendations. And then you can shop a bunch of different items you can check out as a guest or a VIP. But when you do VIP, you get some fun little perks. You get 50% off of regular prices and free shipping. Honestly, Fabletics is it's kind of like your one-stop shop for athletic wear. There's yoga, there's running wear, there's gym wear, sports bras. They have shoes, accessories. They honestly have you covered on everything gym wear. And then you get free shipping on all orders that are $49 or more. There's no no commitment to purchase monthly. You can really skip any month. And any kind of like design that you see on these leggings or sports bras are going to be like one of a kind. You're not going to be able to find them anywhere else. I highly, highly recommend checking them out. You can go to fabletics.com/Taylor and you can get 2 leggings for just $24. $24 for 2 freaking leggings. That's like so cheap, and they're like good quality, and they're super, super cute. So definitely check them out. You can go to fabletics.com/Taylor. I think it's really important as a woman of color to also follow other women of color on social media. Like, I know a lot of the women that follow me are white women, and most of my friends are white women. And not that there's anything wrong with that, and not that I'm like shaming white women. But I think it makes a huge difference to like be around people that you can relate to and that you can look at and kind of like see yourself in a little bit. And I've noticed that as like a huge change for myself, even just being really close with Naya, the little girl that I share on my page sometimes, who's a really close family friend, and watching her grow up, you know, and like seeing other people in her family that look like her. I can see like the impact that it has on her. And it like somewhat makes me sad for like child Taylor, that I'm like, oh, like I wonder how my life would be different if I had had that, you know, represented in my life growing up. And for you, both of your parents are Black. And so I'm curious like what your experiences have been as you've grown up, if you've, you know, had a very like strong Black community around you, and how that's kind of like molded your perhaps kind of like advocacy work in this like social justice area of being a person of color.
I love that question. Yeah, I mean, it absolutely has. So for me, I feel like I grew up in a very unique place at a very unique time. So as you said, both of my parents are Black. And I grew up in what I call a diverse little bubble.
Yeah.
So Seattle,
it definitely is a little bubble.
It is a major bubble. So Seattle, for people who are maybe not familiar with it, is not the most diverse place in the world. The Pacific Northwest in general is just not very diverse. It is mostly white, and that's just kind of how it is here. But I grew up in a super diverse zip code that per capita is one of the most diverse zip codes in the nation. It's like this little tiny neighborhood tucked right between Seattle and Renton. And that is where I grew up. So I grew up with 2 Black parents in the 90s, which during a time in the 90s, pop culture was very, very diverse in a way that it almost isn't now, which is crazy. So I grew up like in this diverse little bubble with 2 very pro-Black parents, with all of this like renaissance of 90s music, movies, television. I mean, even Nickelodeon was like so diverse. You would watch all that, and Kenan and Kel and Cousin Skeeter, and I constantly saw people who looked like me.
What was the Twin Sisters show?
Oh, Sister. Yeah, I shared on my
you
Insta
posted
story.
that the other day.
I met them. Highlight of my childhood. Yes.
Yes, I remember when you posted that, I was like, literally had a moment of like reflection in my life of like, my biggest thing was like that I went and saw Britney Spears in concert. And I was like, very different experiences. But that would have been great.
Exciting.
Yeah, but that I was also like, that would have been great to have been able to like have that have been more encouraged, because I did like that show and I would watch it.
Yeah, which was great.
Yeah.
And so for me, I was constantly surrounded by positive examples who looked like me, and also a lot of people who didn't. So my school, my high school that I went to was super diverse. There were a lot of Black kids, but there were also a decent number of white kids. There were a lot of Asian kids. There were Latino kids. I mean, there were a lot of different people. And so for me, I always grew up with friend groups that were very diverse.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I got to college where I realized, oh, I'm a minority. Like
where did you go to school?
I went to the University of Puget Sound in Tacoma.
Oh, okay.
Tiny little liberal arts school in Tacoma, Washington. Not diverse at all. And it was my first time being in an environment that was just not diverse. And it was the first time I was a minority. It was the first time I had experienced racism. It was like a eye-opening experience for 4 very challenging years.
Yeah.
Mine,
because I grew up when I did live here in like Lower Queen Anne, so not as diverse, and went to Co, which was somewhat-ish. But my huge culture shock of like being aware of like, whoa, I'm different, was I then had to move to South Carolina for middle school. And And that was a whole other
Yeah,
experience.
that's a major culture shock.
For sure. And that was where I had experienced racism for the first time.
Yeah.
I'm curious for you, like, what that looked like in college, like how you experienced that.
In college, it was very passive. So I went to a college that was
in
very...
the Pacific Northwest,
I
you don't
know,
say.
Shocking. Liberal and passive. Who'd have thought? So it was very passive. It would be very schneid little comments and little remarks, but that were constant and that after a while definitely chip away at you. And it was continuous. I mean, everything from backhanded compliments of like, you're pretty for a black girl, or like, oh, is that because you're black? It's like, are you saying it to remind me that I'm black? Because I know I am. So why do people need to constantly bring it up as if I'm not aware? Like, I know who I am, but for some reason I noticed that my blackness made people feel uncomfortable for the first time.
It was something that they noticed.
It was something they noticed and needed to constantly speak about. And I realized, like, oh, my existence makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yikes.
It's a wild thing to think about.
Oh, yeah. Or also, one of the other experiences that I had in college that was like super blatant was my friend and I had a really close girlfriend, and we were one of the few black girls on campus, and we were constantly called each other's names, even though we're two totally different people. We have totally different personalities. We don't look anything alike. I mean, we were two individuals, and we hung out a lot together, but we were constantly called each other's names because our individual identities didn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, blatant.
And like, you have a pretty specific name.
Yeah, we both do. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was just, things that we laughed off or tried to party away or binge drink away at the time that now I look back at it like, wow, that was actually really horrible. And I was like really hurting.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to handle it.
Yeah. And when earlier we spoke and you had mentioned that you have had some experience in therapy. Was college one of the first times that you had kind of entered that space?
Yeah, college was the first time I went to therapy. So my junior year in college, I went to therapy for the first time. I was just having a ton of anxiety.
Yeah.
A lot of it was more so related to things outside of school, just kind of life in general, my family. When I was in college was when the economy crashed and my family was impacted really hard by that. So me even being in college and staying in college was a really big burden. And so college for me was a really stressful experience because of how hard it was on my family. And so I started having really severe anxiety and like very severe physical panic attacks and started going to therapy for the first time around that time.
And did your family know that you were receiving treatment during that time?
That's a good question. I probably mentioned it to my mom, just that I was going to talk to people. I mean, she knew that I was having a really hard time managing kind of my stress and everything. That's a good question. I don't know if I may have mentioned it, but I don't remember. Yeah.
I guess
they're supportive of it.
Yeah. I was just curious, like what your experience, like for me, growing up with like a white family, like that was very, part of the family is Italian, and so it's a little bit of a different culture around mental health there. But going to therapy and talking about that and all that was like very encouraged, very supportive, and talked about a lot. And I know in the Black community that's not as like widely talked about and not as acceptable. So I was curious for you if going to therapy had created any kinds of conversations around that within your family or even your other friends who were people of color, and what that would have been like.
Yeah. Thankfully, my parents were super supportive of it. My parents are kind of, I don't know, they're fantastic, but we're all weird in my family. We kind of do our own little weird thing. And so I know my dad had his own experiences going to therapy because he's dealt with anxiety as well. And my mom is just super open-minded when it comes to anything. Yeah. And so they were supportive of it. And even later, after college, I had gone to therapy when I'd been living with my parents for a while, and they were super supportive of it then. But there definitely is a stigma in the Black community for sure around therapy. And I think a lot of it really stems from fear of the unknown, a mistrust of the medical community in ways that
representation
representation
of people of color being helpers.
Exactly. And a big part of Black culture for a lot of people is also very firmly rooted in the church. So for Black communities, especially back in the days of after slavery ended, or, you know, during the Jim Crow days, it was like the Black church was kind of the only place that was sacred. And so you'll even see today, you know, a lot of older people saying, well, we can pray it away. Well, we can, you know, you just need to go to church, because to them that was kind of all they had, the only tool or resource that was safe for them. So they, you know, go for that method. And I think a lot of those fears are kind of rooted in that. But I also do think that in recent years, there have been a lot more of an effort, at least for people our age and kind of the millennials, to be like, let's break these stigmas, let's break these generational traumas, like let's really work through some things in ways that our ancestors weren't able to.
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
I had to. But yeah, and I think a good example of that, I don't know if you watch these at all, but the Red Table Talks.
Oh, I love Red Table Talk.
They're amazing. If you guys haven't watched them, I did share one of them with Ellen Pompey. I've never pronounced her name wrong. Yeah, Grey's Anatomy. Yeah. Wow, I'm really blanking on what her name is in the show. Meredith. Oh, thank you. Wow. That was quite a brain fart. I was like, get it together, Taylor. Yes, Meredith from Grey's Anatomy was on a Red Table Talk, and she's married to a Black man and has mixed children, and shared all about that. And it was interesting. Jada had mentioned actually in that, and this was part of the things that I shared on my Instagram. She had talked about, you know, how she couldn't really ever date white guys, because it was just, at the end of the day, it came down to the fact that they could not empathize with her oppression and you know, suffering of people of color. And I thought that was really interesting. Like, it caused me to very much reflect on not only my childhood and growing up a person of color and not really knowing what that is or feeling that way sometimes, but then also was like, yeah, all I do is date white guys.
Yeah.
So you're like, do you date white guys?
I don't anymore, but I did. So I've dated white guys before, and I have a lot of feelings that are very similar to what Jada echoed, just kind of from experiences, and not anything to say that, you know, my ex-boyfriends who are white guys are bad, or, you know, anything like that, because they're not. But I definitely had experiences where I would have certain concerns or anxieties or fears of things that were very deeply rooted in my experiences as a Black woman, that just weren't taken seriously, that they just didn't fully understand. And so I, you know, when I was younger, I dated a few white guys, but now that I'm older, it's not my preference. Yeah.
See, one question that Rob, who I mentioned earlier, is basically like my dad. He has always been a prominent person in my life to cause me to reflect on what that means for me, being a person of color. And with any guy that I date, that's always a question that he asks them, is like, are you prepared to date a woman of color? And what does that mean for you to date a woman of color? And for a while, I would like push it aside and be like, does it matter? Like, stop asking them these questions. But then it's like, no, it actually really does matter, because my life experiences are very different from yours. And in order for the relationship to be really connecting and, you know, successful-ish, you gotta be able to like empathize with each other. And you gotta like understand what those experiences are. And there definitely have been relationships that I've been in with white guys where I have felt like such a novelty. And I don't know if that's something you can relate to, where like they've never really dated a woman of color, but maybe they had sex with them. But other than that, like I was like their novelty.
It's fetishized. Yeah. I mean, thankfully thinking back on my old relationships, I don't think that there was that dynamic at all, because I dated people who, it was very organic. Like I was friends with them first, and it kind of evolved into more. But I've seen situations with other people where that it can be very real.
And I don't think that it's necessarily always super direct. Like, I mean, going into it, it definitely didn't seem anything like that. But then like comments can be said, you know, about like loving my brown skin and stuff like that, that like after a while I'm like, that makes me feel really uncomfortable actually. And like, you've only ever dated white blonde girls and now you're dating me. And I'm sorry, but I have feelings about that, and that makes me a little uncomfortable. And I'm like, why are you dating me? And it would cause me to like really question and like think over, like, are you actually liking me for me, or are you liking me because I'm different?
which is a valid question.
Yeah.
And conversations that I think need to happen in any relationship.
Yeah.
For sure.
Mm-hmm. So you don't really date white guys?
I don't. I don't. I did when I was younger, like I said, kind of back in my earlier 20s. And then as I've gotten older, I just found that just isn't personally what I'm looking for. I mean, I don't have any... I think everyone can kind of do what works for them. So I don't like think anything badly of like mixed race couples. I think like do you, but for me, it's just not what I would prefer. I think especially too now that I'm getting older, I also think a lot about if I were to start a family and if I were to settle down with someone, what does that look like? And I, as I said, I had 2 Black parents and I grew up in an identity that was very firmly rooted in Blackness, and seeing my parents who are still together and who have that like Black love, I'm like, that's kind of what that's what I would want. And if I were to have kids, I like the idea of having kids who their identities are firmly rooted in their Blackness and they don't maybe feel torn with one thing or the other, understanding what their identity is. That to me, I don't think is necessary for everyone, but it's something that's important for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's good that you are able to like recognize that. And I think that can be super helpful for a kid to grow up in that. I think another question that Rob has like always implanted in my head and that I think about now too, and will ask people when I date them, it's like, if we do have kids, like, are you prepared to raise a child that's not necessarily going to look like you? And, what are you going to do? Like if that child experiences racism, like, are you going to be prepared to like deal with that kind of a thing? Like of having like a Black daughter or son, like might not, I mean, who knows if I have kids with a white guy, I might end up just looking like a white kid. But
as Jada would say, that part, like that's such a good question though, that I think is really important to think about and is super important to talk about of what happens if you have a kid whose cultural identity doesn't match yours and they experience things that you won't. Like, what does that look like? I don't know. I mean, I don't have the answers to it, but it's a really good question.
Something to think about if you're going to have some babies. Hopefully planned, prepare yourself a little bit. Yeah. But no, I think that the, like, even just around dating in general, I'm trying to be open to dating like anyone, and it's not necessarily based on like preference of what their background is, but like if you guys click, and I think just naturally being someone that's grown up mainly around white people, and for you being someone that's grown up mainly around people of color or Black people, that, you end up kind of finding who you kind of click with.
Yep.
And for me, it's always been white dudes with beards.
There's nothing wrong with that. You live in the right place. I don't.
I know. This is very true. And one piece along with that I've always reflected on in dating, and definitely want to hear from you on this part too, has been focused around my hair. And you guys always ask me, you guys listening, I always get questions about my curls and like what I do for my curls. And I know I've let you guys down. I don't say a lot about them. They're just kind of there. But if you want some really great like hair tips, you should definitely follow Les on Instagram because she does great updates on the curls and is really rocking them and embracing them, which I hear is a new thing.
It is. Yeah. It wasn't until last year, summer of 2018.
Yeah. So it's a new thing, but if you want those kinds of tips, I'm sorry, I haven't been a reliable source. So you should follow her for that kind of information. But I'm curious, A, like what kind of started this like transformation for you? And then B, kind of how that's played a part for you in dating? Because I didn't know it's played a part for me.
Ooh, yeah. I am really excited to dive into this because I love talking about hair now. I do. I didn't always. So my hair has always been a thing. Yeah. Ever since I was young, I've always had just long, large kind of attention getting hair. It just has always kind of been a thing. It's always been a thing that people talked about or would make comments about or come up and...
One of the first things I say about you.
Yeah, yeah. Ever since I was a little girl. Also because I probably had about the same amount of hair as I do now on like a much smaller body. Head. So it was like a lot more back then. And, but, also, again, being a child of the 90s when stick straight hair was in, I really, really wanted to straighten my hair.
Yep.
My mom, as long as I could remember, at least when I was younger, straightened her hair all the time. And so that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so I begged her literally for years. It took a couple years of begging. For so long, she was like, no, no, no. And so we started straightening my hair when I was 9 years old. And I kind of left it that way ever since. I want to say that's
sooner than when I did. I think that might have been earlier than I did. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I got my first relaxer at 9 years old, and then I just kind of kept it straight from there on. So for a solid 20 years. Wow. Because I'm 29 now. Yeah. And it was just kind of always how it was.
Whoa. Wait. I have to wrap my head around this for a second. I'm like, wait, math. Okay.
Yeah.
You got this done when you were 8, 9.
9, yeah. When
you were 9.
Yeah.
And then you just kept getting it relaxed?
Yeah. I didn't get my hair relaxed a ton. Well, I got
I don't know how a relax works.
It depends on the person. So for me, I would get my hair relaxed once a year. Every year.
What does that mean?
A relaxer is a treatment basically that chemically straightens your hair. It's kind of very similar to a Brazilian blowout, or it's very similar to that.
Yes.
Super similar. So how often you do it is a matter of preference.
Yeah.
For me, I only did it once a year, also because my mom didn't want it to damage my hair. Some people maybe do it every few months. It just kind of depends on what you want to do.
But then when they do that, you can still wash your hair and it just stays straight.
Yeah. And then it just stays straight.
That's some crazy science shit.
It's really bad when you think about it.
Yeah.
That can't be good for you.
Not at all.
Yeah.
I'm also revealing just how white I grew up because I did not have any kind of exposure to any of that. So
really?
I'm I have no clue what that really means, what that experience is.
I feel most Black girls my age or older, this is changing now that natural hair is becoming more people are accepting it. I think
Thankfully.
Young girls, it's not as much of a thing, but I feel for my age and older, most Black girls can remember their first relaxer. That is a part of growing up. It's a rite of passage. It's your first period, your first bra, your first relaxer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I did consider getting. I was just always referred to as permanently straight, but it would be for a few months or something like that. Yeah,
yeah.
And I had considered doing that, but I was always so scared of what if I do want my curls one day, and then what if I can't ever have them again? So I never did it, but I would straighten. But okay, so you had that for
for a long
over
time.
A decade.
Yeah. So we would relax it once a year until I was 21. That was the last time I relaxed it. So I had really long hair when I was in college that was super just damaged from being relaxed. And then when I was in high school, I also had a lot of chunky blonde highlights.
Yep.
It was a great look. The 2000s were great.
School. Yep. It was bad.
My hair was super long, but it was just ratty. It was damaged. I had broken up with my first boyfriend. I was I need a change. I need to cut it all off. Dumbest thing I've ever done. So I cut off 11 inches of hair into a bob.
Oh my God.
Taylor, it was...
Okay, first, bobs with curly hair is
I know. Well, no,
hard.
I was still straightening it. I was still straightening it. We weren't curly yet. I couldn't.
Okay.
And then, so it was still straightened. And from there on, I would just straighten it with a straightener. And I found that I didn't really need a relaxer. I was I don't feel like I need this anymore. My mom had recently also given them up because we were finally these have to be really bad for us. Let's stop. So then I went a solid 8 years of just straightening with a straightener and not chemically straightening it. And I did that for so long. And that was just kind of how I looked. And it was super boring, but that was my comfort zone.
Yeah. And that's also what makes people feel more comfortable around you.
Exactly, because you kind of blend in easier. But on the same hand, when I saw other women with their curly hair, I was super jealous. I was just their curls are so pretty and my curls are not pretty because mine are just a mess. And when I try to leave it curly, it's super frizzy and I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm just not going to do it. But it finally hit me hello, if you would stop frying your curls and take care of them, maybe yours would look nice too. I don't know why it took me, 29 years to figure that out, but it did. And so this past summer, I just was you know what? I am sick of this that's not me. I just want to kind of embrace who I am more. I want to learn how to take care of them. I had to accept that, like, at first, after 20 years of straightening, my hair is going to look crazy and it's not going to be that cute. But if I can just take really good care of it, maybe it'll get better. And it became a really big part of my brand and also my identity, and people asking me about it. And, you know, it's really hard to blend in when you're walking around with a head of big curly hair. And that was also a big part of why I didn't do it for so long. As I'd kind of mentioned, when I was younger, I was very introverted. I was very quiet. I was afraid of being heard. I was afraid of being seen. And it's very hard to not be seen when you have a head of like giant curly hair. But I got to the point where it was like, one, I'm ready to take care of it. And two, I'm not afraid to be seen anymore. So like, forget it. I'm just going to do what I want. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm so happy for you. I'm so glad that you've reached that point. Because, that's beautiful.
Thank you. Only took like my whole life, but it's fine.
I think it's a really interesting process to go through. And like, I cannot relate so much to like just like the length of time of going with having straight hair.
Yeah.
But every time I go to straighten it, it's a emotional process, and it's like mentally draining sometimes, going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and noticing how it changes like my demeanor and how I feel about myself and how I carry myself. Even it completely changes how people interact with me. Especially in dating. That's always like a big marker for me of like how you treat me and how you accept me and how you talk about my curls. Versus when it's straight. And that's like, you know, are you really accepting like the real me, you know? And like, how much am I allowing myself to be me? If I would date a guy and felt like I needed to go straighten my hair before I went out on a date with him,
deal breaker.
Wasn't
like,
me.
No.
Like like to me, it was like, no, he wants like white Taylor. And like, certainly there is part of me that is that, but at the core of who I am, like I am curly.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I can't even imagine like just how big of like a transformation that is to go through from just such that length of time. And I can only imagine that it's like been a journey of like self-love and like having compassion for your curls, because it can sometimes feel like they're fighting against you.
Oh yeah. We're all on their time. Like they call the shots and we go with it.
Yep, absolutely. But I think there is like it's difficult to reach that place of like feeling empowered by your curls and feeling like confident with them. I don't know for you because you had such that length of time where it was just straight, but you know, even like in middle school and in high school, even when I would wear my hair curly, like I would legit get made fun of for my curls. And then during college and kind of after that, it was like I get praised for my curls. And just kind of this like back and forth and these kind of passive like backhanded compliments. And even sometimes, you know, these white girls with straight hair or the curled hair who, you know, it's like, oh, I love your curls. I wish I had your curls. And that kind of a thing. Even that is like kind of uncomfortable to take in sometimes, where it's like, no, you really don't.
You don't know what that means. You don't know. You don't know what that means. And I think you bring up a really interesting point, because I think when we're kids, anything that's different is kind of seen as bad or unfamiliar. And that's why kids make fun of it, because it scares them. And then when we get older, anything that's different is kind of fetishized. And it's really interesting to see. It's almost like a light switch that flips.
Yeah.
Like
definitely. It's all the things that you got made fun of for in high school and middle school that end up making you cool as an adult.
Exactly. Which
is ridiculous. But yeah, I think even... and again, like it's so sad for me as I reflect on like being a woman of color. And that's why I'm like, I need to like, if it's not already in my community, I need to like actively seek that like for myself, like being with Naya and watching her grow up and like seeing her with her big head of curls and whatnot. Like, I'm like, I relate to that. Like I see myself in that. And like, it allows me like to connect with her in a different way. And just even seeing how people comment on her and comment on her curls and like what messages that's sending her, like how you said, from even just being young, like that's one of the first things that people would see of you and comment on and notice about you. And it makes it like such a specific thing about you that like has so much attention on it. And when you like are shy and don't want to be seen and don't want to have to be.
That was me as a kid.
Yeah.
Sure.
Then it's like, yep, time to straighten it.
Mm-hmm. Time to hide. Yeah.
Time to blend in.
Exactly.
Ugh. No. I'm curious a little bit for you, like how, if you've reflected on this in the last almost year that you've been doing this with your hair, of like how you feel about yourself, like now kind of versus then looking back.
Yeah. What's funny is I think leaving my hair in its natural state has been, I joke and I say that it was an iOS update for my personality. Because it has been. I feel like ever since I just started showing up as unapologetically myself on the outside, kind of who I am on the inside rose to the occasion. And I was able to just be more unapologetically myself in other ways as well, where now that I'm like, well, everybody can see me because I can't really hide. And then I just started showing up more kind of in everything that I did. And it's been sometimes a little bit overwhelming, but also really refreshing, where I feel like I'm truly comfortable with myself and here I am and this is what we're going to do. Yeah.
You're like, this is what you have to work with. This is me.
Exactly. But it has been interesting from dating, because I realized I forgot to answer that part of the question, is that men are like so into it, like in a way that is just really, really weird. Like I used to go out and not get hit on. No one talk to me. No one look at me whatsoever. I start leaving my hair curly. Even last summer when I first started leaving it curly and it looked like a hot mess, they didn't care. It was like something different. It was like, oh, different. Like so, they love it.
I have my take on why I think that is. And it could be wrong. My take on that is like, sometimes for me, when I wear my curls, I feel kind of like, I would say this more so in summertime. In the winter, I feel more like when my hair's curly, it's like up in a bun or I'm straightening it. Also just because I'm like, I don't really know why that is. But anyway, in summertime, at least, when I'm wearing my hair curly and I'm, out in the sun and then I'm out at night or whatever, I'm going on a date, like I feel way more empowered with my curls and I feel almost like a wild woman. Like I just feel like, I feel kind of like I'm a boss ass bitch. And then second, I feel like I'm like real fucking sexy. Like I could be ravaged right now. Like I am like a wild, strong woman. Like try to fuck with me because I got my shit together and I'm feeling great. I'm feeling good. Like look at these fucking curls. Like, yeah, I know you want a piece of this. So it's like sometimes like that's my like mindset when I'm in my curls. And I feel like
people can sense that.
Yeah, not only can they sense that, but then I think like that the curls almost in a way like from guys, my assumption, see it as almost kind of this like wild woman thing of like, it has a different kind of like sex appeal to it that I think can be really attractive, especially when you have that confidence with it. But I know for a super long time, and especially with certain guys, I'm very aware of like when I'm going on a date or I'm recycling through someone that I shouldn't be, I notice, where I'm like this guy, every time I see this guy, I feel like I need to have my hair straight, or like even with girlfriends, if I feel like I'm going out with this girlfriend, I feel like I need to straighten my hair. Of being like really aware of that. Because it just changes your whole mental state. I know it might seem silly that we're like just talking about hair, but like, no, it has
more
like
than that.
It has a great impact.
It does.
Yeah.
And I agree with a lot of what you said.
Yeah, like the wild woman thing.
Like, does that make sense? No, I think that that's real. I think that there's still a sense, and I think especially with men, they still have a little bit more of like primal. Yeah, you know what I mean.
That's what it feels so like. Primal for me. Like it feels so natural. Like I'm just like, oh, like this is me.
Yeah, untamed.
Yeah, exactly. Like it feels like I can do anything sometimes, and I think. I don't know if you have experienced this. I mean, you were a trainer for a while, and I don't know how kind of professionally you show up for that. But I know for me, even sometimes like with sitting down with a client or going and having a meeting with someone, there was definitely this sense that like my curly hair wasn't going to be professional and that I needed to like make myself, you know, a little bit more quote unquote professional, which in a way felt like I was whitewashing myself.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what happens. I think a lot of our standards of beauty are very Eurocentric. And I think even for me, that's something that I still struggle with where, you know, I identify as a Black woman. I have 2 Black parents, but someone who maybe doesn't know my family or doesn't know me could look at me and think that I'm mixed.
Yeah.
And not to say that being mixed is a bad thing, but there is also this perception that lighter is better. Or if you have a certain type of curly hair, that's more acceptable than another. So it's this idea that Blackness is only beautiful when it's
more white.
Mixed with, or not diluted with, but closer to a closer proximity to whiteness. And that's something that is really wrong and really messed up.
Yeah.
But is prevalent.
I think in a Red Table Talk, Jada's mom, I'm blanking on her name.
They call her Gam.
Gam.
Yeah.
I think she referred to it as colorism.
It is colorism. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, especially within the Black community, this sense of colorism, which a lot of people I think refer to as like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like they consider it like internal racism or something.
Internalized racism. Yeah.
Where it's like, you know, being racist within your community. But then I was like, oh, that's colorism.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's definitely something, maybe you could relate to this. I don't know. Tell me if you do. For me, in my experience being mixed, and I've talked about this a little bit in previous episodes, where it was somewhat difficult, like to make friends growing up because there was this perhaps sense of colorism where I was too dark for some of the white girls, but I was too light for some of the Black girls. That there was just this discomfort with my color.
Yeah.
And being like a lighter skinned Black girl, I don't know if you've experienced any of that kind of like colorism.
You know, I really haven't. Not in a way that felt really apparent. I mean, I am super fortunate that I grew up in an area where I think situations like that are hard when you are other.
Yeah.
Where you're either too light for this or too dark for that, where you are, no matter where you go, you're kind of other. And I feel like I grew up around a lot of people where we were all kind of other.
Yeah.
Like everyone was other in their own way. So it was like no one really...
Yeah, so it's not going to matter.
It wasn't really a thing. Yeah, but it is still very real. And I have still been in plenty of situations where maybe I'm out with a girlfriend and she's darker and I can see people treat her differently. And it like infuriates me. And I think sometimes where it's a slippery slope is when things like that happen and it doesn't infuriate people, where they kind of either take advantage of it or see it as a compliment, but it's not. Like it should infuriate everybody to see people treated differently off of something so trivial. But it's real. I mean, it happens every single day to people.
Yeah. I'll share a quick story because it was like very infuriating. And I think it's important because I'm sure other people say this, and I think I should have called this person on this statement more, but I didn't. I was other, and had made a comment about, or no, actually, sorry, it was a different woman who was also other. She's more, I want to say she was Latino, and she had a baby with a white man, and the baby turned out more white. And because of her struggles with being Latino and being brown, she wanted to be more white. And so she was very happy that her child came out more white and had made statements of that. And someone else had mentioned, you know, like, oh, like Taylor, like you have like the perfect skin color. Like I would love to have your skin color. And like, I would love to have like a baby that like looked like you or that like was your color. And I was like, no, like,
what do you mean by that? What does that mean?
Yeah. I was like, no, like you might think that it's cute, but there's like a lot of things that come along with that. And there can actually be like a lot of consequences of having a, you know, child of color and things you have to deal with that you might not with a white child. And they were just straight up like, no, I don't care. I would way rather take like having like a brown baby. And I was like, and basically it was just like, felt a bit like it was a losing conversation to have. But I think it is really important to call those things out and to kind of like not only surround yourself with a very diverse community of people, but also to like call that shit out, that like it's not okay to like praise someone necessarily for their skin color because it's not this or that. Like it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, I think in situations like that, people just don't know what they're talking about. I'm like, that person just doesn't know what they're talking about.
No.
Like, it just is.
No.
Yeah. I'm like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, again, it's like the standard of beauty. And I think that's where a lot of the colorism comes in. And I think that's where a lot of like wanting to straighten your hair comes in and all of that. And do you remember, like, have you straightened your hair at all?
I haven't straightened my hair since June 2018.
Whoa.
So, yeah.
Dang, girl.
I know. It's been a minute.
I think it is very helpful.
I'm scared to now.
Yeah. I think it's very helpful to like follow other people and like to, I don't know. You don't necessarily want to have only friends with curly hair.
Yeah.
I don't think that's appropriate to encourage.
That's not diverse either. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think like to at least follow on social media if you can, people that you can relate to, because I think, you know, even when I see like you own your curls, I'm like, yeah, like own your curls, girl. Like fix this shit up, you know, like take care of it. Like you don't need to just straighten it. Like sometimes it feels like that's the easier way. But I think it's also really important, and maybe it's something you've reflected on at all. Like, have you determined when or why you would straighten your hair again?
Yeah. I do think about that. I mean, no time in the foreseeable future, only because it took a lot of like hard work and dedication to get my curls healthy again, that I'm scared that if I straighten them, I would just be reverting back to all the damage that I've worked really hard to undo. Part of me is kind of curious about how long my hair actually is, because those of you who don't have curly hair may not know about this thing called shrinkage. So it's like our hair looks way shorter than it actually is. So I am kind of curious, like, how long is my hair? If it were straight, I could actually see it. But honestly, I feel like I look back at pictures of me from just a few months ago with straight hair, and I'm like, that doesn't even look like me. Like, that doesn't look right. Not that I don't think straight hair doesn't look good, but like, it's now just so not me that I'm like, I don't even have a desire to go back to it, because I just feel so much more myself. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think to your point of like you look like a totally different person, I've always said that's I'm like, that's one of the fun parts of dating someone with curly hair is you get to date like 5 women in one.
Exactly.
Because we can look like, we can look like all these different kinds of women all in one. So it's like, you don't get bored. We keep it exciting. But I think I agree with you in the sense that like when you look at photos of yourself with straight hair, you're kind of like, who is that? Like that doesn't look like me. Yeah. Like definitely the photos where I feel like I am my most authentic self are with my curls. But I think there's something to say to like understand your purpose in doing something. And that's where the whole mental energy comes in when I'm about to straighten my hair is like, why am I doing this? Am I doing this because I don't feel like I'll be accepted wearing my curls? Or is it because, you know, I feel like I need to whitewash myself before this meeting? How can I still show up with my hair curly? How can I still feel confident and comfortable in my curls? And maybe some days it's just like, I'm curious how long my hair is right now. Maybe it's like, I want to be able to wear my hair for a whole week and not have to worry about like fixing it. So I'm just going to straighten it and then it'll be fine for a whole week. And I don't have to stress about it.
That's real.
Sometimes it's like the convenience part. Sometimes it's, you know, feeling self-conscious and wanting to whitewash. Sometimes it's, wanting to just try a different hairstyle and, you know, be a girl and just like play with my hair. But I think it is super important, like to ask yourself why you'd be doing it.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
Because then you're just like sending yourself all those messages.
Yeah,
and we gotta like own this shit.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
And like you're doing an amazing job of owning it since June.
I think it's just because I'm
That's
not
like
old,
dedication.
but like because I came to that realization just kind of as I'm well into adulthood, I think it's been easier for me to kind of make my decision and stick with it just because I've been through so much, and my 20s are almost over. So I'm pretty firmly rooted in kind of who I am and what's on that.
Yeah.
But 5 years ago, I wasn't, you know, I might leave it curly. I would have left it curly for a day and then gotten self-conscious and straightened it. Like I did plenty of that.
Do you feel like you'll ever like have the desire to just like change it up?
Maybe. I mean, I would love to play with color. That would be fun.
I feel like that's also equally bad for your hair.
It is super bad. I know. But like, I don't know. It could be fun.
Yeah. Totally.
I haven't dyed it since high school.
Yeah. Mine's been a few 5-ish years since I've put any color in it, and I might be putting color in it soon.
2019, the year of change.
Yeah, you know, everything's changed in 2019. I think like there's honestly so much more we could talk about on this topic of curly hair, just because it's so much more than just your hair, which sounds so cheesy, but it's a lot of identity that you go through. And I'm like very happy to hear that you feel more so like you're being your authentic self and showing up in like a very different way. And I think that comes through, and like hopefully you see that. I mean, I think even like on your page and through doing your podcast and stuff, that like this is the thing that I think is always so beautiful about when people do show up authentically, and that they're always so scared of is that people aren't going to accept you. But when you actually show up as your authentic self and you're vulnerable and you let yourself be seen for who you are, that's when people connect to you even more.
Exactly.
And I can only imagine, I mean, your following has been like all super authentic and like you've grown it, which is like so impressive. But I think like, I imagine you only see that like continue to grow as you show up authentically.
Yeah. And I mean, I think also too, the cool thing is that I've started to attract different types of people as well, of people who are, of maybe girls who, you know, felt like they were looking for something in the fitness space, but didn't feel represented by it. Or maybe a young girl who has crazy curly hair and doesn't know how to fix it, but really likes looking at my stories for recommendations. And she can kind of relate to me about that. And people who, a year ago, you know, they wouldn't have gotten that. And so knowing that I'm serving people who I think really need it because they don't feel as seen.
Yeah. Curly headed girls need this shit. We need, that's like, I feel very guilty sometimes if I do a photo shoot and my hair's straight and I'm like, fuck, I should just done it curly and shown that I can like own my curls, you know, and maybe when I'm closer to my 30s. I will tell you for me, I really personally matured a lot over the past year. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if because I was just super immature before or if there's something to like approaching your 30s. But for me, last year, like 2018 for me, as I was 28 turning 29, was like a very transformative time in my life where I just gained a lot of clarity about who I was and kind of my place. And I don't know. So maybe in a couple years, you know. Maybe I'll not straighten my hair for months. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. I feel like that probably won't be me. I admire it so much in you. And I think I'll allow myself to still straighten it, but I'll be very aware and cautious of my intent and why I'm doing it. Yeah. And don't feel guilty if you do. Yeah. That's where like I try. No guilt. To encourage other people, you know, like if it's something like you want to do just for the sake of like, I want to try out a different look today and like, you know, get done up in a different way and you're excited about that. And it's not like I don't want my curls, but that it's like, you know, I'm just curious about doing something different. Then absolutely allow yourself the freedom to do that. Totally. Or even people who are, you know, like I was a year ago, just not there yet. Like I'm not going to shame anybody who still wants to straighten their hair, rock a weave, chop it all off, shave it all off. Like, if you want to pull a Britney, pull a Britney. She made it through. You will too. Listen, like, do whatever it is that you want to do that you feel ready to do. And even though it's so much more than just hair, it is still just hair at the same time. Yes. And it's okay to just play with it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Again, we could talk so much more about this. I'm going to leave it to you to talk more about it on your page. So if you guys want to hear more about this or like see how she keeps her curls for like super long and they look fantastic. You always do this like bun too, like an up bun. And it looks so stinking cute. It's literally a ponytail. Like, I just have so much hair that my ponytails are massive. Yeah. Like our curls are definitely different, but like I'm like, shit, she looks so fucking cute. But yeah, so you guys should follow her at Balanced Black Girl. Then she has her podcast as well. And I will also actually be a guest on that podcast, and we'll talk about some fun stuff on there.
Yes.
I will also link the link to that episode in the episode description notes for this episode. So if you want to listen to that one too, do a little back-to-back action, more than welcome to. And yeah, thank you so much for being open and talking about all this on here. I was very much looking forward to this and did not disappoint.
Well, thank you for having me. I know, so was I. I mean, if I'm coming on Let's Talk About It, I'm ready to talk about it.
You're ready to talk about it. So cheesy.
We're doing so well.
Okay, well, thank you so much again. And thank you guys so much for listening. You guys can always send emails with topic suggestions of things you guys want to hear covered on the pod to ask at letstalkaboutit@gmail.com. And don't forget to leave iTunes reviews. I love hearing from you guys and knowing what you're liking about the pod. So definitely head on over there. And I'll be back next week with a different topic and a different guest. So have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you guys next time.
This podcast is brought to you by Wave Podcast Network. Check out all of our shows, including the Brain Candy Podcast, I Don't Get It, Babes and Babies, Coffee Convos, and Let's Talk About It.